What up, everybody? Scuffy here, and it is time to continue our chaos card by card breakdown, as it were. Video 1 covered the Warlords as well as cost energy cards 0 through 2. This video will cover energy cards cost 3 through 5. And the next video, the final video, will cover cost cards of 6 through whatever. As there are some 10s and 15s and whatnot. But the 3s and 5s will really get into the meat and potatoes. The chaos and potatoes. The miasma and the emotion. The emotional spectrum. Whatever chaos stuff you got. That is what the 3s and 5s really start to sing. And they give a lot of staples or a lot of things that you see frequently of that are used in a lot of decks and are just very handy all around. Tactics as well as some troops. So Silent Death stuns all undamaged enemies. Typically, this is a card that is played with Mortarion or Corbacks with poison. You can poison a troop that's fully healed or fully at health. Stun all units so everything dies. Very easy. It's a nice 7 kill the entire board with Poison Cloud for the Death Guard. But I also use it very nicely in some Alpha Legion builds. And any other sort of control deck where maybe you're playing a control game. This kind of has some moments there where in meta where the opponents like to drop a lot of spawns, a lot of tokens, or a lot of high health troops, or fully heal their board. Silent Death is a good way to shut that down as well. But it has its uses, primarily for Poison Warlords, but also very nicely for some other decks that enjoy stunning things, keeping things around, whether that is operatives, units that have secret orders on them, for instance, or possess on them. Great way to maximize the use of that. Now, it's important that they have to be undamaged, so that won't stun your enemy Warlord usually because they typically have taken damage. And if you damage a troop before you play Silent Death, then you kind of defeat the purpose of playing Silent Death. You're better off stunning, and then if you have anything that you want to kill or throw out there, go ahead and do for it then. So, Breach. Breach is just a versatile burn card. 2 damage for 3, 5 to a front line. This is, when I say versatile, I mean it's versatile for decks that want to go face. Angrons are going to run 2 breaches. Karns probably run 2 breaches. Jagathai might not run a breach. He should. White Scars are very vulnerable to frontline, but it's a high damage to a frontline troop. Otherwise, it's 2 damage to anything else. Artwork's pretty solid. Just a very effective, in the same way that Crack Grenade is effective against vehicles, Breach is effective against frontline. So when you're seeing a lot of frontline, consider playing breaches. Cultist Brute. This actually has some momentum if you haven't played the event right now. If you haven't played this Madness and Blackstone event, or by the time you're watching this, the Madness and Blackstone event has passed, there's a perfect example of the Cultist Brute potentially running wild with the Insurgent Leader, who can create cultists. And all of his troops are cultists. This is great for a cultist deck, especially if you've got like 3 or 4 cultists on the board, even 2 or 3. You play him, you attack with those cultists, he gets stronger, and those other cultists do whatever cultists do. Some of them have a backlash, some of them make marks of chaos, some of them, kill other units that make other cultists. Very solid for a cultist deck. If you're not playing a cultist deck, don't play it. It's fairly simple. It took a while for me to realize, like, these are abs. For a moment there, like, the coloring here is so dark. I thought that was just like his shirt, but then I see, wait, no, that's some odd abage, by the way. Like, those are abs that extend upwards into, I don't know. The muscular definition could use some work here, but either which way, Cultist Brute are good for a cultist deck. Speaking of cultists, Cultist Sorcerer. This is probably one of my favorite cultists. This is a 3/3. It's got sacrifice. It puts in play less than demon. Puts in play, not adds to your hand, which is great. So you kill this guy on your turn. He puts in another unit that either you can use right away if it's a Seducers or a 5/4 fast. Maybe it's something like Kaztrak. Maybe it's something like a 6/6, Beast of Fire. It's going to draw heat. These guys are really good. These guys are good in fail because he can give them flank. They're really good in just cultist decks in general because your opponent doesn't want to, give you more troops or demons. They're not going to try to attack them on your turn. But if you combine it with something like the las rifle section, so you attack with them for 3 because your opponent didn't, so they've got full health. You las rifle them, shoot them in the back, and guess what? You still get that demon, and you have a las rifle section in play as well. Just like I said, one of my favorite cultists. Ecratrez. Ecratrez is not seen as much play as he used to. I think there's a lot more stealth answers, and typically by the time you play him, use his ability once, he dies the next turn. There used to be a lot of decks that could make more use of him, keep him around longer. And those decks might see a resurgence when we get new cards for the Orphans of War, and Ulrich Branthen or Atesh Tarsa do something extra with him. There are some other cards in here too. Ferrus Manus does something. Any warlord who can increase the health of troops is going to do something with Ecratrez for the long game. The problem is we don't have a long game currently. The game does not run very long, so the odds of seeing him used frequently, not as often. But when you do see him, you want to take care of him because this is potentially 9 health that your enemy warlord is going to get. In addition to just having that body and using him as an additional attack if they need to. Sometimes, instead of healing for 3, you throw Ecratrez out there as a stealth troop, and he just does 2 damage to kill a 9 attack troop. He's still provided 9 health to your board, or to your board state, or to your warlord. Hellspawn. Now, this is one I don't use a whole lot, but it actually does go really well with the Ruinstorm, because it gives +2/+1 to a friendly demon, or just give a Mark of Chaos to a non-demon troop. Now, that's a really expensive way, 3 energy, to give a Mark of Chaos to a non-demon troop. But giving +2/+1 to a friendly demon is pretty cool. Especially if some of those demons have, like, Bloodthirst. Like Beast of Fire, I'll pump that out. The artwork is pretty cool. I like the artwork there. I dig it. But I haven't used it a whole lot because I tend to find either better cards that pump, or demons don't need pumps because they do exactly what they need to do, and I have just enough energy to support my board elsewhere. So maybe if you're running Ruinstorm where you don't have maintenance, this is a better card. But then the big toss up there then too is, why would you run that, which is a +2/+1 for 3, when you could just run Unrestricted Frenzy, which is a board-wide +1/+1, possibly +2/+2 for 3. So better cards. What's next? There's a Heretactica. Now this card has completely changed from what it originally was, which was a very, it was good for 2 decks. And this is actually good for a lot more decks now, although it does not make sense having it and do what it does, how it is. It gives a Mark of Chaos to all your Mechanicum non-demon troops, and you draw a card. That's really nice. If you don't have Death of Innocence, that is a great 1-turn burst of Death of Innocence. Instead of playing 5 and getting this for every troop that you play, if you have 3 or 4 troops on the board and you just play Heretactica for 3, you draw a card, and everything is going to get that Mark of Chaos. I've got a couple decks where I like to run 2 Death of Innocence and a Heretactica for a potential 3 Marks of Chaos on everything. Very powerful. When you get to pull that off, it's really fun. It doesn't happen that often. It's an option. It's an alternative. If you don't have Death of Innocence, or maybe you're not running all Mechanicum troops, then you might not just want to play this card out, because this is just Mechanicum given. But it's very important that it has non-demon troops in it, because lore-wise, demons don't get Marks of Chaos. They're already demons. That's the whole point. And there is 1 demon troop in the Mechanicum currently. I don't think we have another. I don't think Defiler Prototype is demon. It is not. It is just a straight vehicle. So the only demon troop that we actually have, for whatever reason, is Telemot. Don't ask me. Don't ask me why. That's just what he is. Okay, so Heretactica Informant Network, this is a staple. This is a period. Deal 1 damage to all enemies, and they lose stealth. Even if you weren't dealing 1 damage to all enemies, losing stealth to the board is really good. This would probably still be very played. The dealing 1 damage makes it just answerable to a lot of things. It also single-handedly handles late game Defenders of Caliban options. Informant Network is just really good. It was the minute it came out, and it has never really changed. It's a 3 energy card. If you aren't put it in your deck, then you either have got other built-in random damage options or built-in anti-stealth options such as poisoning or removal or deal 2 to random or 3 to random. That's one way to get around not having Informant Network. If you don't have those options available to you or in your deck, then Informant Network is the one that you have to have. You just, period. Otherwise, if you're like, I keep losing all these stealth cards, well, play the card that removes all stealth. That's the answer. That's how it works. You know, your opponent keeps losing to high health warlords. You know what they do? They play cards that remove your health. It's amazing how that works. Evelyn. I just have this guy in a backlash deck. The artwork here is really, really funky. I think the face on his chest is better than his actual face. He is a cultist, though, without being a cultist, right? He's got Davenite Cultist. No cultist tag here. Where is it? Most of the Davenite cultists aren't cultists for whatever reason. They're just not. They're a cut above. But his backlash gives a mark of chaos to a random friendly non-demon troop. So, you know, for lower level play or as you're getting the game, this is a decent rare. But as you play the game, you find ways to work around him, easily dodge him. He doesn't do anything if he's just on the board by himself. He can't give a mark of chaos to anything if everything else is dead before you kill him. So he quickly runs away. As far as 3 cost goes, Cultist Sorcerer is better for me because the opponent has to kill him on their turn, or I get to kind of control what I do. Whereas Evelyn, they can really control everything. Like from when I play him down, if I don't have any other troops, if I don't play any other troops on my next turn that he can give a mark of chaos to, and not as fun. Another Davenite Cultist who's not a cultist is this guy. Don't play this guy. Period. 4/2 with Berserk. Not worried about the Berserk. It's the 2 health that is the issue. He dies. He doesn't get to do anything. No, don't play it. Orbital Siege. This is a niche card. This kind of does what I think Heretactica was intending to do initially, the original Heretactica. But this one discards all tactics from your hand. Discard. They don't go back to your deck. They're gone. But you deal 3 damage to all troops for every card discarded this way. This is a very niche neutral board wipe. You have to have several tactics in your deck to make it, in your hand, to make it work. And then you're getting rid of them, so you're not even going to play them. But then you're potentially doing anywhere between 3 to up to 30, well, no, 3 up to 27, I should say, damage to the entire troops. It will not damage the enemy warlord. And then you'll have an empty hand, or at least you'll have all tactics out of your hands. So hopefully you can follow up with it with something else. But as such, like I said, it is very niche, so you're not going to see it very often. But when you do, it's a surprise. Nobody expects to be sieged from orbit, you know? Who expects that? Priest of Old Faith. These guys are very nice cultists. They've got Duplicitous. They're 2/3. They come out at 3. And then your demons cost 1 less. These guys are really powerful for support for Ruinstorm, who are all demons. Surprise. These are great infantry to throw in there. But they're also good for getting out a cheaper Kazdrak. They're good for getting out, you know, some of these higher cost demons if you want to run the high cost demons. Teloth or Remnant. Remnant is a great one out there because then you can bring it at 6, and then he gives them marks of chaos. If you're running demons, you're going to want to run Priest of Old Faith if you get them. Dracnian, get them Dracnian for 4? God, that's nasty. So what if these guys die? They did their job. And the fact that they're duplicitous really helps them get that long. They're susceptible to flanking trips. They're susceptible to tactics, but the enemy warlord will not be able to answer to them. Screamers are... Oh, Screamers used to be so good. They used to be the worst, man. They were... Oh, they used to be 5/3s. And that was a problem because you had to basically hit them in their face for 5. Then take 5 for them shooting you. Then you could kill them on the next turn. So you take 10 damage from a Screamer. Rarely is that the case now. These are still useful in fail because he can make them flank. They're still useful if they manage to get generated with several other demons via something like Pax Chaotica. But outside of that, they're not something that you're going to want to run or play unless you're just trying to play demons and you're trying to throw your opponent off, or you don't have anything else. The 2 health makes a big difference. It really does. They are vulnerable to so many warlords who just deal 2 damage. So why play a 3 energy to put a troop down that your opponent can just, for free, or on their turn, kill and then possibly play their own troop? It's a waste of a card. Again, as I said, when they're generated for free by something else, then that's fine. You're actually getting value because you've already played that other card. A Cygnus Adept, this is another cultist I like that just, if you don't handle these guys, they're going to make another cultist for 1 energy. Great ability, great way to flood the board. These guys can be generated by the corrupted ecology, and then they can in turn generate more troops, and then you've got cultists doing cultist things. Cultists probably synergize with themselves on level of how Mechanicum as a whole synergizes with its entire faction. Cultists are very limited, but when you get the right cultists in the right combination, it's pretty potent. Sork. Now, I just recently got this guy, and I was really excited. I was like, oh, cool, Duplicitous. He's kind of like a little bit of a Jubok. He's kind of like a little bit of a Kaiser Lane, and he's kind of a little bit like a Lord Malkin because he's got Duplicitous. He's got 3 different things going for him, but I've not been impressed with him so far. I think as far as the new legendaries go in the Galaxy and Flames for neutrals, it's probably my least favorite. 3/3 for 3 is solid stats. He has Duplicitous. I have not yet used his ability because he typically dies to flanking, and there's just so much flanking out there that there's not a whole lot going for him. If he had stealth, it would be a different game altogether, but you still have to pay 1 energy to get an Imperial Army card. Now, the cool thing is this is a way for Ruin Storm, which cannot put Imperial cards in their deck, to play a Chaos card that could then potentially, because he chooses it, it's potential that you could get a Manifest Destiny, or a Jubok, or a Crucial Choice, or just a Frontline, or an Ornatov's Barge, or a Las Rifle section. It's entirely possible with Ruinstorm that they now have that as an option. The problem is that he has to survive, and that's hard for them to do. It's hard for the game to do right now. So I like the idea. I would like to see it happen. I would like to be able to use his ability. I just haven't been able to. So I don't recommend picking him up in the shop unless it's just for the collection. He's not a must-have. He's not anything that's breaking the game or making people like, oh man, you got Sork down. It's like, oh, okay, cool, buddy. I'll just kill that guy. Terrorhounds are nice. These guys are nice. These have a 3 health. They have frontline. The Berserk kind of works against them because they are going to be attacking, but at 5 attack, that's fine. They did their job. Either they're dead on your opponent's turn because they've gotten rid of the frontline, or they're dead on your turn and they've done some damage. And that's, at the very least, that's the best thing that they can do. 5/3 for 3. High stats, worth the maintenance too. It's really nice if you get them generated, but there are some decks that just enjoy playing them very easily that have either ignore maintenance on demons or ignore maintenance of 2. So Chaos Spawn loves these guys. Ingathel loves these guys. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? Brotherhood. I want to say one of my favorite cultists. I'm probably going to say that a few more times, but these really guys are. I love the artwork here. Brotherhood of the Knife. There's the knife right there. It's a knife. I love the giant hand. This guy's hand is as big as his head. That's it. That's a big hand. But They are a cultist that your opponent is going to want to answer, because if they don't, every turn, at the start of your turn, you're going to get that Taint of Chaos. And Taints of Chaos are very nice to have. They are nice to have. So I think that's makes him a good troop. I think Brotherhood is better than the Horus Cultists at 2 energy, even though Horus Cultists arguably have better artwork. I love both the artworks of both of these guys. Brotherhood can sit back and make those chaoses, and if you can find a way to protect them, maybe you've got a frontline warlord. Maybe you're playing Sergeant Cork and you just throw the Brotherhood out on curve, attack, frontline. Your opponent doesn't have a Seek and Destroy or other 3 damage tactic. You're going to start getting Marks of Chaos, and the Brotherhood is going to be helping you make some other strong troops out there. The Trap, early on, if you played the game, if you remember when you first played the game, the Trap was one of the best, like, oh, well, and I say early on, I mean, like, if you started with the first expansion, you're like, oh, the Trap, that's so cool, man, when they play a troop, it's going to kill it. And this is kind of cool for a few decks that are kind of, like, you can make this work. The Trap is okay if you can make it work. There are a couple warlords who can add health to it, actually, or give it Survivor. Or if you can play Chaplain Xavier from the Salamanders next to it and give it Survivor as well, you actually get multiple uses out of the Trap at that point. So there is some ways to make this kind of play around and give you some potential hard removal. But obviously, at the end of the day, it's vulnerable to the big thing, which is your opponent can control how they do that. They can play a low health troop, throw away. They can play no troops at all, and this does nothing to them. Or they can just go and straight damage the Trap out and get rid of it. So there are some workarounds. I wouldn't put it in every deck, but if you've got some decks where you've got a warlord or some units that can give Survivor to it, it's actually pretty fun to do. I would recommend that. And it's a great way to kind of throw off your opponent from playing stealth, high health, like 4 or 5 health troops. Now, the downside is drop pods. This does nothing to the drop pod. The drop pod lands, the Trap triggers, the drop pod goes away, but the troop inside is fine. So, yeah, helpful against landing for Blood Angels, not so much against Sons of Horus or Targhost, especially. Unidentified Vessel. Very cool card here. Draws 2 cards from your deck that cost 2 or less. This is great if you're playing a low health troop or low cost troop deck, swarm deck. Maybe you want to get 2 Nurglings into your hand. Maybe you're playing Lucretia and you want to be able to draw more cards to get more troops out faster. This is a great way to go about that. Maybe you've only got 2 troops that cost 2 or less. This is a great way to get those troops as well. That's a really good card. That doesn't mean that it goes in every deck. It doesn't go in most decks that I build, but I think if you're building around a certain idea and you want to speed it up, that's what Unidentified Vessel does. It's really cool. Warp Retreat has had a history of making problems in the game, especially for cards that have gotten very powerful rally effects. Mortis Squad from the Raven Guard, most especially, was a high offender, but this can be useful or abused with something like Hanun's Mortars, which is a 5/4. I tried to do the same thing with the old Underverse from the Space Wolves, but the 5/4 that rallies, comes in and deals 4 random damage. Or maybe you want to bounce around with the Alpha Legion and Attilan Score, and giving Score back to your deck and then pulling him out as a 0 cost card that can stun everything. Really powerful if you comboed it with another Warp Retreat later on in the game and drew a 0, that card back up at 0 to play it again. They increased the cost of it, which really limited the application. You can still play it 3 to 4 times in a turn, depending on other cards you've got in your hand, but that's a lot further down from the 5 to 6 times that you could play it at 10 energy. So that's good, because people are tired of this card. It doesn't go in every deck, but decks that abuse it really abuse it. Warrior Lodge. I like this in my Ingethel because she gives Marks of Chaos for lots of things. This could actually go really well in a Tybalt Mar deck because he's giving Marks of Chaos to Sons of Horus troops with his Battle Honor. Plus, there are Sons of Horus troops that have Marks of Chaos. This is a great way to just give them that +2/+2 as well as the marks that they've got. So I like this as a card to consider if you're playing with Marks of Chaos. If you're not playing with Marks of Chaos, don't consider this card at all. Watchers in the Dark is good. It's annoying if your opponent gets it and you don't have an answer to it. It's not terribly annoying because it has 2 health. Even though it has stealth, it has 2 health, so it can be dealt with fairly easily. If you've got random damage, spread damage, artillery strike, no survivors, even a defensive satellites is likely going to take care of these guys. But if you don't, it does throw off from you putting down your troops that might have stealth or survivor or relentless or ward, and he just jams it, gets rid of those things. That's not a bad card to consider if you have got high initiative. As a high initiative warlord and you want to play it and are really looking for ways to counter your opponent playing buffs. If your opponent is a buffing warlord, or you run into a lot of warlords that are buffing things, Watchers in the Dark can take care of some of that. Won't do anything against a warlord that doesn't run troops, though. Achillean Wordsinger. We're talking cultists. This doesn't just work for cultists, though. She works for every friendly Chaos Infantry troop. Gets +2/+0, which would include these Watchers in the Dark. But this is really cool because she drops out in those cultist combo decks. Your opponent's got a board of 2 1s, or 1 2s, or 3 2s, or 2 2s. A single Achillean Wordsinger turns them all into 4 or 5 attack troops. Not to mention, maybe if they've already got something on the board that's buffing as cultists are attacking, like we talked about with the cultist group, which suddenly then just becomes a 4/4 +1/1, or 4/2 +1/1 every time a cultist attacks before it. She is a card that if you want to build not just a cultist deck, but if you want to build a chaos troop deck, you want to have Achillean Wordsinger. She is a quick turn flash, and then on top of that, she's a 3/4 body that your opponent has got to deal with before they deal with the other stuff. The other stuff will revert back down in power, but you've bought time, and that's important. I like Artillery Strike. Artillery Strike is really good. I usually put one of in most of my decks if I'm not running Informant Network, just as a deal 2 to 3 random enemies, which is typically enough to help me cover the spread against stealth troops, or even taking out a board of 2, because then this will do 2 damage to the enemy warlord and then finish off the 2 other troops. Just a really good card. It's not a must-have, but it's really good. I like it better than defensive satellites. Play it, but don't play defensive satellites, guys. We're not. Just don't. Just don't. Battleflies. You know what? These guys aren't bad. I'm gonna say it. They're maintenance 2, which isn't great, but in a couple of the warlords, like we mentioned, that ignored maintenance 2 or reduced maintenance 2 of demons, these guys are not too bad. 7 health. 7 health. Yes, they can be bounced by Ambassador Malgator. They come out at 4 cross, but they've got 7 health, and they have poisonous, which means that they're probably going to poison a flank that tries to kill them. They're going to poison 1 or 2 troops. I mean, it's a way to get rid of things. But it's not something that you gotta have. It's typically what happens when you use your Chaos Sorcerer, and that's like the worst thing that you could get is a Battlefly. You're like, oh, Battlefly. Dang it. I mean, okay, it's a 7 health troop, whatever, but it's not what you want. Beast of Fire, on the other hand, has a higher maintenance, but he's got Bloodthirst, he's got 4/5. If your opponent does not do damage, or does not at least do 3 damage to this troop, they're going to take 8. That's strong. That is a very strong beast. I like this. This is not something I put in my decks as much anymore. I'll kind of throw it in a deck occasionally as just a one-of, just because I'm looking for some sort of monster to do some damage. But when they get generated, again, going into a lot of these demons that are being generated by cards that create demons. We've only talked about Cultist Sorcerer. There are a couple others higher up in the chain that do this. But these guys put in work. Now, Corrupting Influence. This gives 2 marks of chaos to a friendly non-demon troop for 4. A little high cost, It's high cost because technically those 2 marks of chaos should only cost 2 energy, but it's the fact that you're getting card economy. You're paying 1 card to do 2 at the same time. That's, I guess, the upsell. The artwork here is really good. Really good. I believe that's Eidolon. The half dead, or the twice dead. But Corrupting Influence. It works in a Ingethel deck that wants to kind of surprise opponents with like a turn 3 demon. Boom, here you go. Here's a demon. Mark of chaos on a troop that I put 2 marks of chaos on. You didn't expect that, and now there's a greater demon on the board. That's entirely possible. But it's high cost, and that's why I don't run it. I know I've seen people run it, and it's always surprising me when it plays out, because it's like, oh, 2 marks of chaos, and you never know what you're going to get. If you want to play with it, that's fine. I don't think there's a deck that you can build it around, though. Dark Retinue, this is one of the newer cultists added with Galaxy and Flames. Very nice here, 3/4 cultist. Heals 2 and gains +1/+0 when you put in play a Chaos Infantry. This is kind of like an elevated version of the Cygnus Fanatic. It's a higher cost card, it's got higher stats, and instead of healing completely, it just heals 2. But at higher energy turns, you can play multiple Chaos Cultists. You can attack with this, play a Cultist, this gets stronger, and it heals. Maybe play a Mark of Chaos on this, and it heals. They've got a lot of potential with a Chaos Cultist build. But as with the Chaos Brute, Cultist Brute, if you're not playing Cultists, do not play these guys. There's better cards. Embers of Ispawn 3. I see this go in some builds that try to do Marks of Chaos or try to do Demons. I don't like it. The artwork is okay, but it's a 1/7 that I typically ignore and just focus on the enemy warlord and maybe kill the troop or 2 that it gives a Mark of Chaos to. The best thing this can do is give itself a Mark of Chaos 4 times to become a demon, but that takes 4 turns. And it's typically ignorable, or at that point I've had 4 turns to draw a stun card or a can't attack card, at which point, or even a jam card if I need to jam it when it's got 3 marks on it, and then it just reverts back to a 1/7. It's not something to throw in your deck unless you don't have a whole lot of other card options available to you. Great Prophets. These guys I don't ever see or play. The idea is kind of cool. Reveal a random card in the enemy hand if it's attacked, and create a copy in your hand, but they don't have stealth, they don't have duplicitous, they don't do anything else beyond that. What if it's a tactic that I can't play? What if it's a tactic that is faction specific? What if it's a high cost tactic? Just creates a copy of it. It doesn't get rid of it out of your opponent's hand. So I tend not to play them. I don't play these cultists. These are 5/3 cultists. That's it. That's all they are. 5/3 cultists. They got those old school flamers. I gotta respect that. I gotta respect the old school flamer. But and they went so far as to like brand the Mark of Chaos on their fuel canister. That's dedication, guys. That's dedication. You know, because those fuel canisters, those get changed out. So each time, it's like a new blessing of chaos to load that in there. But no, those guys might get generated by a couple cards that make cultists, but 3 health is better than 2 health, but there's no rally effect, there's no synergy with cultists, they just are cultists, and therefore I pass. Outrage Noble is nice though. If you're running infantry deck, any infantry deck, not just the Chaos infantry deck, any infantry deck, this guy's great. He's duplicitous, he comes out 3/4. Solid stats for 4, and then he's going to reduce the cost of your next infantry by 2 when you use his ability. That's really good, especially against like Lucretia, or if you're an Ornitov or Fail, you've got a lot of high energy, or you've got ways to give these guys flank or protection. They can make more infantry that you're dropping out cheaper. It just fuels. It fuels so good. Possess. I talked about Possess with the Silent Death. This goes in a couple of decks of mine, especially my Alpha Legion stun decks, because this can just turn a valuable asset that my opponent has into my plaything. I love this card. Doesn't mean it goes in every deck. Again, I'm going to say that lots of times because it doesn't. It goes in a very specific deck. I like the artwork here. I like the fact that I can, boom, deal 2 damage to adjacent units, and then my opponent has got to try to play around this as I stun that troop or lock that troop down, and it's just burning them. This, you throw this on a Canis Vertex weapon, throw it on the shoulders. Every turn, it's going to deal 2 to the head, 2 to the fist, 2 to the head, 2 to the fist. You can ignore that weapon and then hit the fist or hit the head even further. Like, it's just, yeah, it's so cool. Priest of Thoros, I like these with challenge decks. I like the challenges that use use troop abilities. I use that because then he puts in play a lesser demon. He's stealthed, so he's going to survive. The next turn, his energy is using that to put in play a lesser demon. There are probably better ways to do that challenge. I think the Thousand Suns and the Night Houses are probably better ways to do that challenge. But for fun stuff and for throwing out demons, this is a good way to do it. And you never know what you're going to get. You could get a Beast of Fire, you could get a Battleflies, you could get a Seekers. You never know. Tancred is another one that works with that challenge. It's another one that makes Cultist for Ackley and Wordsinger. That's about it. And he's got the old art. They've got the old Ganger art. I appreciate that. I respect that. These guys are obviously able to put out, where are they at here? The Kabbalists. These guys just bow. Oh yeah, we've got our knife. We've got our gun. We've got our goblin hats. We've got our goblin cultist hats on, is what that is. But, you know, that's it. That's it. I would pass on these guys. Don't put them in your deck unless you're playing for a challenge. Don't do it, guys. Terror Campaign sadly doesn't get played. If this costs 3, I think people would play it more every now and then. The problem is there are just a lot of tactics currently that make troops. This doesn't affect those. This doesn't affect punitive action. This doesn't affect muster for the War Master. This doesn't affect Host of Angels, Oratov's Barge. This just affects troops, and it costs 4. That's a lot of cost for less impact, as the game is relying on cards that create other cards at this point. And that's a shame, because I think the idea could be really cool to stop your opponent from playing flank troops or fast troops. The problem is many are playing tactics that create those troops, and those completely get around this. Telos Changers used to be one of the best combo pieces in the game for so many decks. Emperor's Children, Alpha Legion, Thousand Suns. Thousand Suns was the reason we have this iteration of this card today, where it just deals 1 to 2 damage to a random enemy troop. And it's a 3/4. Not a 2/5, not a 3/5, not a 2/2. Such wasted potential. But occasionally you generate them and you've got a couple tactics in your hand and they kill a troop or whatever. That's great. You know, listen, I'll go on record now. I may regret saying it, but I miss the Telos Changers Laser Light Show of 2018. I did it. I said it. Warp Assaults. Warp Assault. I like this tactic, actually. 3 damage. If the target dies, add lesser demon to your hand. So you're going to get a troop. You're doing damage. For 4 costs, that's not bad. That's kind of on par. It's not 3 for 3, but it's 4 for 3, because if it dies, you get a troop. That's a demon that you could do something with. Lesser demon, most notably. Defensive Satellites. I said it before. I'll say it again. Don't play Defensive Satellites. People play Defensive Satellites. It doesn't mean it's a bad card. It's the RNG element that really just sours people on it. You're not relying on your skill. You're relying on the fact that you have 5 energy and you rolled some dice. Maybe you roll 4s. Maybe you roll 1s. Maybe you lose because you rolled 1s. Maybe you won because you rolled 4s. The point is you didn't do anything except get to 5 energy. Or higher. There are better cards that you can play more smartly. That shows that you actually have a better understanding of the play and know what your tools will do for you, as opposed to relying on the luck of tools. But that doesn't deny that this is what this card does. This card hasn't changed since day 1. I don't think it used to do 1 to 5. I think it was always 1 to 4. It's just, I just don't like it. I don't think anybody feels good when they win or lose a game because of defensive satellites. They shouldn't. They shouldn't. Darius Rhino, this card is not a great card for its stats, 5 for 3, but it goes in handy with several decks that want to do Reckonings or combos. Ferrus Manus Reckoning, Sanguinius Reckoning. If you want to get Reckonings that require you to have troops that die, this is a candy card. If you want to play cards that increase things when troops die, like Kazdrak or the 5/5s from the Iron Warriors that like to throw those little surviving cultists out. Where are they at here? The Dominators. Your opponent kills that Rhino, and then on your turn you've got 3/1/1s that you throw into the enemy face that not only fuels Perturabo's Reckoning, but also pumps with the Dominators. Or maybe you want to play it with the Raven Guard, who've got the Victorious Aut Mors, or Victory unto Death, or even in death. All your troops get 2 backlash, random to a damage. Yeah, those 1/1s then become 1/1s that deal 2 to a random enemy. It's a nice little combo piece if you want to play that way. If you're not, don't play with that Rhino. It's a bad Rhino. It doesn't do anything else for you. And typically, if you're playing that type of deck, your opponent's smart enough to see it, and they will get rid of that Rhino and kill the Zealots, and you won't get anything, maybe, except like a lower cost Reckoning, I suppose. Drachnian. I mentioned this is a very powerful demon. This plays a pivotal part in the story Master of Mankind. I recommend you read it. This is actually one of the things that he does in that book. Drachnian, Backlash. If you control non-demon troops, destroy one and return this to... It's great with the Swarm deck. So if you've got 2 or 3 troops on the board that aren't demons, this guy's going to live forever. He's a 6/6. He only has Maintenance 1. He doesn't do anything else except for just stay around and basically possess the next body. And if you kill this 6/6, he kills a 1/1. He's back on the board. He's a 6/6. That's pretty strong. That's pretty strong. And as I said, if you can find a way to bring him out cheaper or just drop him on the board, you've got other threats. Your opponent's like, great, I already had to deal with 3 of these troops. Now I've got to deal with 3 troops plus a 6/6 demon who I can't get rid of until I get rid of the 3 troops. It is really frustrating for your opponent, and that's the intention of this guy. He's the echo of the first murder, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it's good stuff. I like the idea of Elite Bodyguard. I do. I like if your Warlord's attack deals 2 damage to the attacker. We've got a couple of these cards added with Galaxy of Flames, or if your Warlord, if your opponent attacks, like the Alpha Legion, have got several, like deal damage if your enemy troop attacks. I like the idea. The stats of this card are not bad. I like the stats of this card. It's hard to fit it in presently. And the fact that they can just be shot or destroyed or flanked without any repercussions, only if the Warlord is being attacked, that's the one area where it's kind of like a weakness. Or if your Warlord is just being shot with direct damage tactics, then that does nothing. These guys don't do anything. They're just a 4/5 body on the board. But I do want to see them work. I want to do something with them at some point. Ichirin. Got demons? Want to ignore the cost of your demons? That's exactly what this guy does. He's not a cultist, but he is a 5 for 5 for 5. That is right costing. That's proper costing. He's in the pipe for 5 for 5. Ignore the maintenance cost your demons. You throw him down with a reduced cost Slayer of Worlds. Guess what? You've got a 5/5 and a 15/15 with no maintenance. That's pretty cool. Or maybe you have got several other little demons that you've been dropping, and you've got Ichirin, and he's just ignoring the maintenance on those. He's really not a bad body if you're playing with a lot of demons. If you're playing a non-Chaos Warlord troop, basically. So you're playing Igathel or Chaos Spawn, you're already kind of lowering the maintenance of most of those demons, so he's not as necessary, but that's an option. Kazdrak. I've said this name several times in this video. I've said it in many other videos before. This guy is a monster with token decks, decks that make 3 or 4 troops or 2 or 3 troops before 5 energy. and then Kazdrak drops, and then just everything just goes off. You attack, that troop dies, everything else gets stronger, including Kazdrak. Maybe that troop kills another troop, so then everything gets a +2/+0, and then they attack again. Only maintenance 2. Like the artwork for this card, this is a good card to pick up in the shop. You will not use this in every deck, but you will use this in many decks, especially if you've got decks that are making, like, Defenders of Caliban love Kazdrak for some reason. They make a lot of stuff, he kills a lot of stuff and makes them stronger. That's what he does. If you're playing Pollux, you can use it with Pollux, you can use that with Latara, you can use it with most of the Imperial Army Warlords, actually. You can use it with anything that has a way to make lots of tokens. If you're just a strong way to make your deck stronger, or have a mid-game reach, as it were. So Kazdrak is worth picking up in the shop. He's a good one to buy. Khorne's Favor is strong, but it's not as strong as it used to be, thank goodness, because it used to be just ridiculously ridiculous. It still can be ridiculously ridiculous, but in less scale. At 5 energy, your Warlord gets Bloodthirst and +1/+0. That's it. That's at least 6 damage. At least. And I say at least because there are Warlords who can gain more attack, have ways to increase their attack, or have ways to act again. If you play, Orders from Terra, then it goes from 6 damage to 12. Now your Warlord's taking, 8 damage to do 12 damage. But maybe they've got sneak attack. Maybe they found a way to get terror. Maybe they found a way to increase their attack by an additional 2 or 3, so then they're actually a 6 attack, so then they're actually attacking for 12 and 24. It's possible. It's not for every deck, especially if your Warlord is not I attack Warlord, I sit back, I shoot, or I support Warlord. Khorne's Favor, it's not going to go in that deck, but if you want to make your Core Swain a monster, if you want to make your Lucius a beast, if you want to make something like, I don't know, let's pick another swordsman. Garrow. Oh, God, Garrow. Garrow could be nasty with that. I just pulled that name out, but I mean, that's possible, because he can act again. Planetary Purge is pretty good. Not for everything, especially if you've got a lot of troops on the board that you don't want to die, because this is going to repeat this to a random unit. It's entirely possible that you kill a troop and then you kill all of your troops, or it hits your face instead of their face. But it feels more effective, and it feels like you have a little bit more say with it than defensive satellites. The truth is, what it feels like and what it is are two different things, because what it is random damage, as is defense satellites. It's targeted damage with random damage element. And I can't get behind that. Speaking of random, the RNG element in Chaos is strong. Pyramid of Photep creates a random tactic in your hand. It's got 2/8, it's got ward, it's susceptible to flanking. I play it in some meme decks. This is not a card that should go in your competitive deck, but if you want to play with memes, or if you want to play with this just to kind of see what other tactics and weird funky combos you can do, you can make something. Sometimes it generates some really good stuff, sometimes it doesn't. Rain of Fire is a nice card for sentence decks, but the Raven Guard recently got Shadow Killers, which kind of overshadows Rain of Fire, because it does basically the same thing, as well as works towards their mission. This is just a way to deal 1 damage, and then you deal 1 again. It helps if you've got units that have got Survivor, and they've got 1 health, and you kill them, and then you trigger the Survivor, and then the Rain of Fire finishes them off. It can be useful that way if you're encountering that. That's one way to deal with it. Reldred. He's okay. He's got the old artwork. He's a Davenite cultist who's not a cultist, but he gets a Mark of Chaos as a rally. He's okay. At worst, he's a 5/5 or a 6/4. At best, he's a 4/7 poison. Renegade Knight might be better, honestly, in my opinion. I like the artwork better. He's got Duplicitous, and then instead of Rally, he gets a Mark of Chaos as a Relentless. Whereas Reldred only gets 1 Mark of Chaos. Renegade Knight can sit there and buff up with a couple Marks of Chaos before you do something with him. So, I like that. That's cool. That's decent. Cygnus Demagogue. Oof, this guy. He's a cultist, and when an enemy dies, he gets a Cygnus Acolyte in your hand. You play him on the right board, you can quickly get like 4 or 5 of these guys in your hand. Lucretia makes ample use of him sometimes because she can play him cheaper. She can play other troops cheaper, and then she can play those acolytes for free because she reduces their cost by 1. So this guy can really quickly turn around a low hand into a high threat hand because those acolytes all do something when they die. And as a 3/5, making troops, you want to get rid of him, but you can't not ignore all those other bodies too. And how do you get those cultists? You get the Eightfold Brand. You put the Eightfold Brand on, and then guess what? Your Warlord has Relentless, create a random cultist troop in your hand. Maybe you put 2 Eightfold Brands on because this is an epic card, and you want to be silly. 2 free cultists in your hand every turn to throw cultists out there. Just go crazy. Go nuts with the cultists. Give them all Triumph of Chaos. Give them a Mark of Chaos. A board-wide Mark of Chaos. 5 energy for a Mark of Chaos is too high. That's a ridiculous cost. But if you've got 5 to 6 troops on the board, then you're really selling it because then you're giving a Mark of Chaos to all those troops for at or equal cost. Now, if you're playing with just Mechanicum troops, Heretactica is the better card because this is going to be for all your Mechanicum troops. And you draw a card, and it costs 3. The difference is this is a higher rarity, and it is focused to a specific neutral build. Whereas the Triumph of Chaos can work for Astartes, it can work for Chaos troops, Imperial Army troops, vehicles, it doesn't matter. As long as it's not a demon. Sirek, another Davenite, Lodge Priest guy, Backlash adds a lesser demon in your hand, it costs 2 less. This guy's not bad. I like to have him in my Backlash challenge decks, just because. But he used to be really powerful, and it was one deck back with Barge of the Damned. Oh, old Barge of the Damned days, where you could, with Barge of the Damned, just put in copies of something that died. So all you had to do was kill 1 C-Rec and then play Barge of the Damned, and you got 3 C-Recs for free, or for 9. 15 energy for 9. Yeah, sure, why not? But he's past that. We're past that. The game has moved on. And he's okay. That's about it. That's all I gotta say. Volcanic Instability, this is going to be the last 5 energy card that we're going to touch on. This is better than Defensive Satellites in the fact that you know what damage you're dealing. You're dealing 3. And if there are 5 or less units on the board, you know that you're dealing 3 to everything. It still has a random element to it, but it has probably one of the least random elements to it because it is such a high threshold. 5 random units, that includes your warlords. That's you and your warlord. There's 2, so there can be 3 other troops before you get to the point where, like, oh, I don't know if this is going to hit everything. So if your opponent has got 3 troops on the board and you don't, guess what? You're going to do 3 damage to all of their troops, plus your warlord and their warlord. It's very reliable for Angron builds. It's very reliable even for a Kabanda. A Kabanda that doesn't mind if he's trying to deal with a board swarm. This works really well with sacrifice decks, salamanders, with Cassius and Vaughn, Vulcan, because they're dealing damage to their own guys on their turn. So if they die, they trigger their sacrifice. Volcanic Instability's got some options. It's a higher cost card, but it does work really well. So that is the cards. Cost energy 3 through 5. That is the bulk of it. That is a large chunk of it. There's some good stuff on the next video coming up. The cards cost 6 through whatever. I appreciate everybody who stuck around, skipped through this video or whatever to get to this point. Keep checking in. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. Pass the word along. Hit the like button if you like the video. This is my second to last card by card, at least for the unforeseen future. Once I hit the next video, we're done with the card by card series, and I can move on with my life, and we can be all better people. But we're not there yet. I need your likes. I need your likes to help me get past the algorithm of the YouTube. We can do it together. Take my hand. Come with me. Soon you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Until next time, keep playing Legions.